Welcome back. Now, Nigeria's Presidential Election Petitions Court, PEPC, yesterday was forced to pause on hearing the petition filed by Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi and the Labour Party against the election of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The reasons were attributed to the seeming poor schedule of documents being sought to be tendered to establish the allegations of malpractices during the just concluded presidential election held on February 25th. The documents were said to not be properly scheduled as ordered by the court. But of course, Peter Obi went on to tender the result of 6 states, 115 local government areas in evidence. He tendered the results, of course, of these areas and once again 115 local government areas as evidence before the Presidential Election Petitions Court in Abuja. Very interesting, turn of events yesterday. Of course, for those who followed that story, it was purely and fully debunked, that there was any crisis or that the case was put down by the court. It turns out that what truly happened was that the court had given the Labour Party 10 minutes to put their paperwork together, which they eventually did and went on with the proceedings. And of course, one of the things that was most controversial was the fact that INEC did come out to seemingly, I'm not sure what the legal term is, but it seems like denounce the paperwork that they had initially signed as to be their one of the forms from the elections. I don't know what the legal terms are, but just bits of controversy here and there concerning the elections and the petitions. The tribunal yesterday would, of course, bring you more updates on that as time passes. Now, of course, we'll move away from that and let's move on to other issues. When a cross-section of Nigerians looked on their TV screens with renewed hope at the presidential inauguration ceremony and the swearing-in of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they were not aware that they would be in for a shocker almost immediately.
The NNPC in its communique delivered that it was selling premium motor spirit for 488 naira at the least and 550 naira at the most. Now, this has, of course, led to protests in parts of the country which have begun in Benin, Edo State, while other disgruntled persons are threatening the shutdown of the economy, quite reminiscent of what took place in 2011. Questions that are being asked are, what is the way forward for every Nigerian in the midst of this chaos? Can the Nigerian Labour Congress force the hand of the barely 1-week-old government to reverse its decision and return to the old price known to many? These are some of the questions we'll be attempting to answer this morning, and joining us to speak about this is the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress in Rivers State and the co-founder of Sahara Group, Mr. Tonyeko. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Olive. Nice to see you again.
Lovely to see you as well. It's unfortunate that we're meeting in such difficult circumstances. We're seeing the outcome of the increase in price, petrol price, of course, because of the announcement made by the president about removal of subsidy. Now, this is not something that was unaware to a number of Nigerians. Many people did know that subsidy will not be continued, but some of them have argued that the manner in which it was delivered is what has caused the chaos. And I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Your thoughts on subsidy, your thoughts on how the president announced it. Do you think that that is maybe what is to blame, or could there have been other ways in which this could have been handled?
Olive, subsidy has been with us for a very long time. And because many people have been so used to it, taking it away is always going to be a painful exercise. I'm not sure that there's any time that is going to be the right time to take subsidy away. It's always going to be a tough decision. So the decision usually at the very beginning of an administration is the best time for you to take hard decisions. What we're seeing now is that this is the beginning of this administration, but what the decision to take away subsidy is not something that started now. The last administration had been working on it. They had already gone into negotiations with it. They had been discussing it. It was all in the public domain as well. The timing was either they would do it before they left or a new administration would do it when they came in. Unfortunately, the last administration did not do it, so this administration had to take it on.
But the manner in which you think that maybe there could have been some measures that could have been implemented, because what we're seeing now is the average Nigerian is being affected. There have been videos of people protesting, complaining about the price increase. We've seen that it has, invariably increased the price in petrol, the price in transportation, feeding, and many people are struggling. So could there have been maybe any measures that would have been put in place to ensure that it cushioned the effect that the announcement was going to make?
There would always be measures. So some of the things that you would see where subsidy is taken out is that how do you then address the pain that hits the common man. Now, there are two levels of subsidy. The first aspect of it is that who gets the brunt of a subsidy removal. You have the people at the bottom of the pyramid, the people who, what you would call the poor masses, and they always feel the pain of subsidy. But then you have the other end of who benefits the most from subsidy. They're not the ones who benefit. The people who actually benefit from subsidy are the rich and the well-to-do. Studies have shown that they benefit six times more than the poor person. But the poor person feels the brunt when you take the subsidy away. And so should there have been or should there be measures that ameliorate the pain of the poor? I believe that there should be.
I think another argument that we've heard a number of people present would be the fact that whilst it is important that subsidy be taken away, but that their concerns are how the monies would be used. And there is a breach of trust between the government and the governed. The people don't express trust that this money will be used effectively. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there are arguments that the cost of governance would actually generate a lot of income and that the government is not even focusing on cutting the cost of governance, which is something that we've seen over the years because it is quite expensive to run the kind of governance that we run. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that as well.
So those are all separate issues, even though they can be interwoven, but they're separate issues. The first aspect of it has to do with trust. And over time, trust has been in deficit in Nigeria. So it doesn't matter what you say, people will not believe that you're actually going to do what you say you will do, which means that the onus is on the government at this point in time to show and prove that what they say they will do, they will do. So building that trust is important. Now, they would always give you the benefit of the doubt in the new administration that you will do what you say you will do. And that's why this administration has a very huge task, now that they've taken subsidy away, to also show people that this is what we're going to do with the money and then go out to make sure it is done. That will go a long way in helping.
Okay, well, let's bring in Osalge into the conversation as well. I believe that he has questions that he would like to ask as well.
Yeah, I want to refer to an interview that you did a couple of days ago with your sister station, where you're quoted to have said that you think that the government should give out palliatives, to the poor. So I want you to quickly speak on that because I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm the only one who doesn't agree with. I'm sure I'm not the only one who doesn't agree with the idea of palliatives. The former President Muhammadu Buhari, I beg your pardon, had, of course, sought an $800 million loan to give out to the poorest of the poor, as they always say. We know what a lot of Nigerians, of course, doubted that was going to go to any poor people because we don't have proper documentation on who the poor people are. So I want you to speak once again on why you think, that should be the steps, that the current administration should take, given out to the poor. And then also you're saying, from that interview that you do not think that subsidy, the whole process of fixing refineries and closing our porous borders, is something that we should bother waiting for before, removing subsidy. Can you help explain those?
Okay, thank you very much. So the word palliative has been well and truly abused in Nigeria. So the minute you hear palliatives, everybody thinks of the negative. But one of the studies that we would always see across board is that where you have people who are already living on the boundaries of poverty, it's the responsibility of government to ensure that they do not fall into poverty, because it's much harder and much more expensive to move people who are below poverty line back above the poverty line. So you must be able to address this aspect of it. And so one of those ways to address it is what they call conditional cash transfers. You must look for people who are already floating around that boundary and ensure that things like fuel subsidy, when that's removed, it does not push them below poverty. How do you do this? We actually have a lot of data in Nigeria, and one of the things that data gives is that it identifies the people who can be beneficiaries of conditional cash transfer. And it's something that has worked across board. At the beginning, most people will feel a reluctance thinking that that money will not reach the right people. But the truth of the matter is that in Nigeria today, we have the data that allows it. And people like Budget, who do a lot of data, who have a lot of data, can be used to help in ameliorating this aspect of it. So that's one way of doing it. Regarding the refineries, for the last 25 years, we have been talking about fixing the refineries, bringing the refineries on board before you remove subsidy. If something we've been trying something for that long, which has not worked, to wait for that as another condition before removing subsidy is just not going to work. And so we need to be able to bite this bullet, take a look at it, and hold the government accountable. You see, that's where the difference is going to be made. The people must hold the government accountable for what they say they will do. Give the benefit of doubt, give them the benefit of trust at this point in time that what is going to be saved in subsidy is actually going to go into areas that affect the people directly. Health affects directly. Education affects directly. Transportation, public transportation affects directly. Those are areas that must be done using the savings that come into subsidy to affect and impact the people directly. And then we hold the government accountable for that.
Well, Mr. Cole, I'm sure you are aware that Nigeria doesn't have money to dash to people. Because when you're talking about conditional cash transfer, it's with the assumption that there is money someplace, that we're just going to pack and give 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000. And the question is, how much will really be enough to give to the poor people and say, okay, this would keep them, above the poverty line for a long time? Can you compare that with using those same funds to invest in some infrastructure, invest in healthcare, invest in a refinery, for example, to at least take us closer to the time where we can stop paying subsidy instead of dashing, because no matter how much you dash money out, you would never solve that person's problem. You're only just going to keep them afloat. And at the same time, we still have that problem waiting for us in the future. So if we're going to take a loan, for example, to do this conditional cash transfer, or we're going to tell the CBN or whoever it is, why don't we use that money to fix a refinery? Or why don't we use that money to fix, something in agriculture or in healthcare or in educational sector?
Okay. So one of the first mistakes that we make is that we always forget that the greatest investment that you can make is investing in the people. The human capital development is actually where we must invest the most in Nigeria. Now, the infrastructural investment that we actually want to put money into, because we see those things as ready and visible, so roads, bridges, things like that you can see, it's not really where you should be putting your money into if you want to combat the issue of poverty, you want to combat the issue of progress and development. If you really want to do that, then it's the investment in people. And one of the ways that you must ensure that you invest in people is look at those who are floating around the poverty line and make sure they don't fall into poverty. Take time to look at the study across board. Any nation that allows their people to fall below the poverty line, they always struggle to develop. Nigeria, unfortunately today, has that unhealthy title of being the poverty capital of the world. The reason being that we have well over 80 million people that are already below the poverty line. To now add to that becomes a problem. And so what we're talking about, first of all, is to look, not to give the whole of the nation money, but to look at those who you can prevent from falling into the poverty. First of all, look at those ones. That's really where you find the magic number. Look at that, deal with that aspect of it. It saves you a lot more than you spend.
Okay, there's so many angles I would like to further explore the conversation this morning. There's also, Osalgedi talk about refineries, and I'm sure that when we come back, we'd like to talk about the impact of the Dangote refinery and how much impact or not it would make. But let's take a break. We'll be right back. To Breakfast Central. In case you're just tuned in, we are still here talking about fuel subsidy and the impact it's had on the Nigerian people. We're still joined, of course, by Mr. Tony Patrick Cole, who is, of course, the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress and the co-founder of Sahara Group. Thank you once again for being here with us.
Thank you, Ali.
All right, before we went on the break, we're having a conversation about poverty, and Osalge talked about having, this money, maybe using the money to work on our refineries, which leads me to the conversation about the Dangote refinery, which was recently launched. Now, rumor has it, we can't confirm this, David Hundeyin was quoted to have said that the refinery was, of course, a show. It was a show of some sort and might not kick into effect in 2025. We can neither confirm nor deny that. However, what would you say is the impact of that refinery? Would you think it will in any way make life better for Nigerians? You know, is it going to reduce the cost of living, especially now that subsidy has been removed? Is it going to have a direct? Are we going to feel a direct impact of having that refinery here?
I think over time you will. Over time you will. One of the things that we have struggled with in Nigeria has always been the issue of refining and refining capacity, not because we cannot do it, but the disparity with price and the subsidy had always made it difficult for you to have a refinery locally here that will function. So we already have private refineries in Nigeria, not just the Dangote refinery, but you would find that none of them do PMS. All of them are doing either AGU and small quantities. Why? Because the PMS regime, the price regime for petrol, just did not work. And so nobody invested in that aspect of it. Dangote then goes and does this investment, but to a large extent, the timing for him is perfect. Because now that subsidy has been lifted, he can now work out a price that will then see over time that he supplies into the Nigerian market. But then the other refineries, Niger Delta and a couple of others who have refineries here, can also then, as modular refineries, begin to expand and make PMS available. So you will see that the removal of subsidy is actually going to accelerate the provision of other refineries here. So over time, you will see the benefit to Nigerians.
Okay. I'm sure that Osalge, your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure that you have a reaction.
Yeah, still on the Dangote refinery, Melekiari, the NNPC GMD, had said that the Dangote refineries is very likely not going to affect the price of petrol. I've also seen former Senator Ben Murray Bruce, talking about how Dangote would really focus on making profit first before even trying to answer Nigeria's cries and the like. So, it almost seems like there is no succor coming from the Dangote refinery. Tony Cole, do you agree with that?
So, again, Dangote would have to respond to that aspect of it. But what I would say is that over time you will see the benefits of that refinery. In the short, immediate term, it's unlikely that you're going to see a decrease in price over time because, like they've said, there's money, there are loans to be paid off, there's capital costs of building a refinery to be seen, and so you're going to have to see all of those things go. But I know definitely that over time you will see the benefit. The prices will begin to come down as competition increases in the refining space.
All right. I'd also like us to shine some light on the NLC and the federal government having a meeting and reaching a deadlock. Now, unfortunately, what we're seeing is, whilst the NLC is trying to push for the interest of the Nigerian people, they have said that the federal government did not consult them as regards palliative measures, neither did they consult them before, reaching the stance that the president officially announced. They've also given the government an ultimatum to go back to the status quo, so the price before the announcement was made. Is there any possibility that this is happening now or in the nearest future? I think
the NLC has a moral responsibility to the Nigerian people to fight for their benefit. And so going to the Nigerian government and pushing for a discussion around the way and manner in which fuel subsidy is implemented is part of their responsibility. So nobody should be surprised that they're going to do that. However, what needs to be done moving forward is, we all know, including the NLC, they've never been in a position to say that fuel subsidy must stay. But what they have always argued about is, what do you do with the subsidy, savings of the subsidy? Can you reduce the cost of governance? Can the money that is saved there go directly to the people, and how will it be implemented? And those are discussions that need and must be had. In moving all of this forward, going back to a situation where you bring back subsidy fully onto the table is not the way forward. And so the NLC and the government must strike a balance as to how do we hold government accountable, because that's really what it's about. How do we make them transparent, and how do we make government accountable for the monies that you save on subsidy?
And is there really a way to be able to hold the government accountable? Because, that's what we see. People have, in some sense, lost faith that the government can actually be held accountable, because the government is seen as this institution that can do what it wants and get away with it. So is there really, how much impact or influence does the NLC in this case wield over the government, and can it really be held accountable?
So the NLC should be held accountable for that, because one of the things that the NLC has is that they have people across board. They have people in the budget ministry, they have people in all ministries. The NLC actually have people that have eyes in government. And if they really want to hold government accountable and they want to make government transparent, the NLC has members to do that. And so it's a moral obligation. And we come back to, what do people want from the Nigerian government? At the end of the day, they want transparency, they want accountability, and they want to be able to trust their government to represent them. If the NLC then stands up to say that we're representing the Nigerian people, then what do the Nigerian people want? They want trust from their government. NLC has to be able to ensure that the Nigerian government can be trusted. They want to know that 1 naira taken here is spent here. They want to be sure about that. That's transparency, that's accountability and all of that. Then the NLC should be able to stand up to say that they're doing that. If the NLC then is unable to do it, then the question is that, has the NLC also been corrupted and they cannot be trusted themselves? If they cannot be trusted, then we have a problem. So if the NLC, who is holding the Nigerian government to account, cannot be trusted, then they have a problem. So the NLC should be a body that can be trusted to negotiate on behalf of the people, to hold the Nigerian government accountable on the account of the people. But if they themselves are not accountable and they are not trusted, then there's a problem.
But do you think that they are accountable as it is?
I think they can be. To a large extent, I have friends in the NLC, and I know that they mean well. I know they mean well. And what they always argue about is that the government also needs to be sincere about what they're doing with money. They believe that the government spend is too high on themselves, that the cost of governance is way too high, and that should be addressed. And those are legitimate concerns that can be made on the table. Now, if you say the cost of governance is too high, then the onus is on government, first on you to prove that it's high, and then on government to show that the cost of governance is not high, but it's appropriate for whatever we do. But these are conversations that can be had, and Nigerians are smart. We can actually take a look at this and know, is it too high? Is it not too high? Should we deal with it or not?
All right. We wouldn't dig into this conversation any further because we want to explore politics for a bit before we wrap up the conversation, and I'm sure that we'll be bringing in Osage into the conversation. But I want to find out what the status is with your case. There had been rumors at different points in time that your case had been withdrawn, and there's also a narrative that was being peddled on social media that you were waiting for a political appointment, which is why you were waiting for the current administration to approach you with a political appointment, then you can withdraw your case. So I'd like you to give us the update on your case and either confirm or deny that rumor.
Okay. So first of all, as far as our case is concerned, we're continuing our case at the tribunal. We have been extremely frustrated by INEC in Rivers State, extremely frustrated. I was on air seeking for our documents, certified true copies of our documents. As we speak today, INEC has not released one document from Rivers State on that. And these are the kind of things that we need to continue to expose to Nigerians. Part of the reason why I am doing what I'm doing is to make sure that Nigerians can follow step by step from a different perspective what happens in politics. And so I'm not withdrawing neither this case so that people can see exactly what it is. INEC has an obligation 2 weeks after an election, 14 days, to release all the CTC documents. As we speak today, months after, they have stubbornly refused to release it. Not just to me, they have refused to release it to Accord, which is still at the tribunal. They have refused to release it to Labour. So there is no party that is pursuing that case in Rivers State that INEC Rivers has refused to do it. Now, the rec there is liable to 12 months in prison. They say he's gone against court rules, So anyway, so that's INEC. So what have we done? We continue in the petition. We have written to the petition to the tribunal, informing them about the frustrations from INEC. They have given us a court order requesting that INEC should release the results, and INEC just refused. impunity at an unbelievable level.
Okay, I know that there are many questions to ask, and I'd like us to bring in Osage as well to share his thoughts on some of these as well and go on with his questions.
I mean, it's pretty much the same, on the tribunal. I wanted to know, if you have any faith in the tribunal at this point, with the way that the process is going. And I also saw that the elected governor of Rivers State, has been criticized for declaring that the state is a Christian state and a few other things that he mentioned. So I want your quick reactions to those. Do you still have faith in the electoral process or in the tribunal, at this time?
If I didn't have faith in it, then I would have pulled out a long time ago. I know that when an institution is painted black, like Nigeria is painted black, we say, oh, Nigeria is corrupt across board. It doesn't mean you are corrupt. I know many people who are not. And so that's the same with the judiciary. People tell you straight off that as far as the judiciary is concerned, you cannot get any justice from the judiciary. They are all there to be bought. But I also know that I've met judges who will stand up on account of the truth, and they will defend the truth. They may be few, but they exist. And so for me, pushing through with the tribunal is on the belief that there are those within the judiciary that will see what's done. I mean, Rivers State played out in the public domain. Everybody saw what happened in Rivers State publicly. Now we have to prove the case in tribunal. And I believe that once we have proven the case in tribunal, there will be judges who will see the fact and that they will deliver judgment.
Do you also expect the same thing from the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal? Labour Party and the PDP are also pushing their own case at the tribunal. Do you expect that something would come out of it?
I don't know what the PDP case is in the tribunal, so I can't speak for them. I don't know what the Labour case is in the tribunal either, so I can't speak for them as well. But what I can say is that all parties will go to the tribunal with their evidence of what they bring, and the belief is that at the end of the day we will get justice for the petitions that are before the court.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us this morning and bringing yourself to answer all these questions. There are more conversations that we would love to have, but we hope that when we call on you again, that you would be able to answer, and that the next time, INEC would have provided you certified true copy, so we wouldn't have to go through this again.
Thank you very much, Olive. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for your time.